I'm Nathan McClintock. I'm an assistant professor here in the Toulon School of Urban Studies and Planning here at Portland State. And I study urban agriculture and food systems for the most part. There really are two cities. You have Portlandia here on one hand, with its eco flats, its green building, its light rail, its tattoos, its baristas. But then you have the other half, East Portland. You could be in East Portland and you'd think you were anywhere in sort of suburban America. There's nothing that distinguishes it as being intrinsically Portlandia-ish or Portlandish. And it's actually very low income, high rates of crime. So there's this real bifurcation of sustainable Portland and the other Portland. Portland has earned the laurels of being the most gentrifying city in America right now. The most rapid rates of gentrification, and with gentrification you have displacement. Right? All of East Portland is this this sort of crosshatch, and they sort of refer this to as a landing zone. So a lot of the displacement, people who are getting pushed out, priced out, displaced from these areas are moving to East Portland. So in the 1940s to 1970s, this wasn't even Portland yet. This was really just the suburbs. You might have heard about these federal housing authority loans. It was essentially the subsidization of suburbanization. This was the federal government subsidizing the movement of white people from cities to the suburbs. And at the same time, you then have the devaluation of the inner city. This is in the 1930s of what's called redlining, where certain neighborhoods were mapped off by insurance companies and said, well, these places are at high risk of default on loans, so we're not going to give any loans for homes in these areas. Well, these areas were coded as red because they had a high population of African Americans and immigrants and undesirables. And so then what you see by the 90s is you have this reversal where now that this part's part of the city, there's new investment starting to happen. Let's go back to East Portland. I said it was out in the suburbs. By the 80s and 90s, Portland annexes it all because they're like, hey, we need more tax revenue. We need more people in our city. So they end up annexing all of that East Portland area. So needless to say, when people come into neighborhoods like this, so there was a big dispute over, they were going to build a bike lane, a bike corridor up North Williams. The African American community who was being pushed out of this neighborhood because of processes of gentrification just found the bike lane to be another sign of gentrification. Urban agriculture has a weird relationship with devaluation of land. Anywhere that land is devalued and vacant, you often find urban agriculture popping up. There's this contradiction here where urban agriculture, it takes rise on these vacant areas, right? But it also attracts people and attracts investment. People are excited to see green spaces in urban agriculture. So often, urban agriculture can sort of like sow the seeds of its own destruction in some ways. And so my point here is that urban ag doesn't cause gentrification, but just that it's entangled in these processes. So I want to end with a more hopeful example, which is when urban ag folks who might be motivated to go into the garden for reasons of food. I'm really most excited when people who start in the garden then ally with activism that's about much more than food, right? So this is an example of the Greeley Forest Garden, a homeless encampment, Hazelnut Grove. This one encampment popped up next to the Greeley Forest Garden. They really developed a relationship, and many of the residents of the encampment began to do work and help out in the garden and were partaking in the food production, et cetera. And in turn, the people from the Greeley Forest Garden actually went to the neighborhood association that was actively trying to get these folks out of here. And they went with them as allies to accompany them to let these guys tell their stories about how they'd been displaced from site after site after site with the support of this organization and then the support of the neighborhood association. The city was then able to go in and really say, like, this will be one of the encampments that we're really going to support. Look, urban agriculture is the gateway drug to the hard stuff. you start with you start with the shovel, and you think you're gonna grow a garden, but you have to realize that garden's not going to stop hunger. What stops hunger is stopping poverty,